Today it's time for a professional match of StarCraft 2, and what I've got for you is a Zerg versus Terran, and we find ourselves on Turbo Cruise. Spawning here in the top right-hand corner of the map, playing with the blue Zerg drones. From Ukraine, we're looking inside of the main of Bly. His opponent in the opposite corner, playing with the red Terran SCVs from France, we have none other than Clem. Alrighty, now... Do I really need to give you any additional trivia on both of these players? I mean, this would normally be the point in the video where I go over their recent accomplishments and all that, right? The thing is, I've casted literally dozens of games of both of these players over the last couple of years on the YouTube channel. In case you're unfamiliar though, let me just say, since they are pro gamers and since they're both some of the very best we have in Europe, they're really good at playing StarCraft. That's really all you need to know. They're both really good at StarCraft. Now, Bly, generally speaking, does like playing a little bit more cheesy. As a matter of fact, I casted a game between him and Neeb recently from WCS Spring. One of the most ridiculous, cheesy games I've seen ever. I'll go ahead and post a link to it down below in the description of this video in case you're interested. Really fun match of Zerg versus Protoss. But Bly, generally speaking, I've noticed over the last couple of years, likes to play a lot more of a macro-focused playstyle. He does throw out the cheeses, obviously, still, and it's what makes him a really scary opponent, I think, to play against. However, he really only does so in, like, best of 3s and best of 5s and best of 7 series. Say, for example, right, it's a best of 5, so the first player to win 3 maps wins. Say he wins game number 1, usually he will throw out some cheese in, like, a game number 2, right? Which obviously, depending on the win or the loss, it doesn't really matter. But in game number 3 at that point, it's going to be a lot more difficult to play against him. And usually his opponents will play a little bit more cautiously. But he does like playing a bit more macro-focused nowadays. And I think one of the reasons for that is, well, because of players like Clem. I mean, Clem is one of those very solid, straightforward, macro-based Terran players. He won't really be messing up in any way, shape, or form. And it's what makes him really scary. Usually, Clem is not someone who will cheese or who will play hyper-aggressively. He will just simply defend whatever you throw at him very easily, and because of that, early game pressure, generally speaking, won't really work that well. And I feel like that's really one of the themes of these top-level players, really for all 3 races. Over the course of time, right, the so-called standard in StarCraft has really developed to a point where everyone's just simply really good at defending all of the different kinds of aggression. I mean, this early game Terran build order, right? So I think this is just going to be a standard 1-1-1. We should see a starport here very shortly for Clem. But this so-called standard, right? This has been developing since the beginning of StarCraft 2. And players have seen all of the builds, right? And they have seen all of the different kinds of cheese and all of the different kinds of aggression. And this is one of those strategies that technically holds everything. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons why Bly decided at some point, okay, you know what? I'm still going to cheese, but not as regularly anymore because it doesn't really work anymore against these top-level opponents since they've just sort of seen everything and, you know, I'm probably not going to be able to win that many tournaments if I play cheesy every single game. And he's actually become a very formidable macro-based Zerg player. So we'll see where this one is going to take us. Clem, though, generally speaking, just super standard. If you're a Terran player and you're looking to improve, he's one of those players who you can just simply straight up copy the builds from. He doesn't really mess around. He doesn't really beat around the bush. He just, you know, takes as few risks as possible while still building up that very large Terran economy. Alrighty, so as I mentioned, a 1-1-1 right here from Clem. Ooh, he's gonna do some switcheroos here. Maybe he scouted something that he doesn't really like too much, although I'm looking right here on the other side of the map and there's really not that much interesting for Clem. Maybe a bit of a change of mind right there, which happens from time to time. The Reaper right there does confirm that there's really nothing weird happening. So, for example, just keeping the Reaper alive for a little bit longer and then checking out how much gas mining there still is for Zerg, checking whether or not there's like a Roach Warren or a Baling Nest or a lot of additional Queens being produced, all of that helps Terran really narrow down the strategy that Zerg is going for. One Scouting Overlord right there, trying to get some information. Not really getting all too much, as it is going to be a 1-1-1, so I think that Bly is going to be pretty happy with that, all things considered. Clem does like playing a variety of Terran builds. I've seen him play the so-called vanilla mech, where you go a lot more siege tank Thor heavy right away. I've seen him play battle mech, where you focus on like Hellions, Hellbats, and Cyclones in the earlier stages before switching to those harder hitting Terran units. And then obviously he also likes playing that bio-based Terran style. So we'll have to keep an eye out right here on the production tab exactly when he adds on additional factories, or if he decides to add on some additional barracks as well. A couple of Zerglings made their way across the map. They're not really going to be able to get that much done, but this is really just a safety group of Marines. Seeing these Marines, though, can already kind of throw Zerg off, right? I mean, if you see this many Marines at this point, yeah, maybe you just gotta go blindly into the melee upgrades. This is a recent development in Zerg versus Terran, where Terran players get a bunch of Marines early on, but then they still switch to mech. I don't know if that's gonna be the case here, obviously, but it certainly is still a possibility. It kind of forces Zerg to go into the melee upgrades, but against mech, usually you kind of want to have your other upgrades instead. Anyways, I'm blabbering onwards. We've had that one Banshee picking up drones left and right, and since the cloaking came up, a little bit unexpected here because that first Overlord died so very easily. A lot of drones are being killed here. Oh man, it's actually going to be able to pick up 10 workers here in total, and that is a lot more damage than Terran players, generally speaking, get at this point in the game. Really wonderful movement right here as well by Clem, though, trying to get as much value here. Clearing a path right there with that Viking. Clearing a path of Overlords that really made it hard for Bly to see that Banshee coming in until the very last moment, I assume. And this is a lot of damage already being done right here by the young French Terran player. And it is indeed going to be factory. So look, this is what I mean, right? We can look at the Banshee and watch it kill stuff, right? We can also, well, apparently watch it die right there to the Spore Crawler. This is what I mean. So he produced like, what, like 10, 12 or so Marines, which were obviously scouted right there by Bly. And then Bly kind of assumes that it's going to be bio, so he goes like, you know, Zergling, Baneling-based armies. But then all of a sudden, it's going to be a mech-based force instead. I really, really like this. Anyways, a couple of Hellions right now, distracting those Queens. They're trying to get at least some of these drone kills. Yeah, still 5 of them end up going down, which is great here for Clem. Because ideally, you don't really want to keep those units alive for too much longer. You kind of invested into them in the early game, both for defense, but also for some creep containment and then some offensive use. A lot of workers have gone down, and this is actually a really rough point already to be in if you are Bly at this moment. I mean, 16 workers, okay? 16 workers, that is more than you want to have happen. If this was like, for example, a Raynor or like a Dark or like a Solar or like a Sue, or Serral. Did I say Serral already? I'm not entirely sure. But usually against those players, you're not really going to be able to get that much damage in. And this is certainly going to make it hard right now for Bly to stay alive. He tried to cut some corners here. Delayed the lair, delayed the Spore Crawlers, and eventually he needed both of them. And, well, it allowed that Banshee, of course, and then also those Hellions to get a lot of worker kills. Now, one thing he does have going for him are, of course, these upgrades. One of the reasons why we saw such a quick set of upgrades here from Bly in the first place is because he scouted that he thought it was going to be that Marine-based army. And against Marine-based armies, you don't really need your lair and your Spore Crawlers nearly as quickly. Usually, if it's a Marine-based opener, you can go ahead and, for example, if you assume, right, it's a 16 Marine drop, which usually hits at about 5 minutes, you can deal with that by just using Lynx and then those Queens. So you don't really need all of those tech units. A couple of those depots, though, do get picked off. The Zerglings desperately trying to get something done. Looks like the siege tank is going to stay alive as well, but, well, it dealt a lot of friendly fire, and in the end, actually, 9 SCVs ended up going down there, which is more than I had predicted when I first saw that move. So there we do have that bio-mech, or rather that battle-mech army here from Clem. Really cool style. I like it a lot. Zergling Baneling obviously sucks against this, so you basically have to switch into something else here later on, unless you can get the perfect surround. Blue Flame, though, is going to finish up in a little bit, and Blue Flame kind of, I don't know, I kind of feel like that puts the nail in the coffin against Zergling Baneling-based armies. I mean, Banelings obviously are pretty good against Cyclone Hellion, but they're not really a cost-efficient trade. Cyclones obviously cost a lot of gas, but Banelings aren't necessarily cheap either, so unless you get a perfect surround, I guess the 2-2 upgrades are going to help quite a bit, but unless you get a perfect surround, I kind of feel like Ling Bane doesn't have as much momentum. Spire, though, will finish up, so maybe Bly is going to prove me wrong. It looks like he wants to play Mutaling Bane here. Does go for the Infestation Pit as well. Roach War now also going for the Muscular Augments upgrade. Or rather, no, that's the Glio Reconstitution upgrade, which is Roach Speed. So, the scan goes down in the main, and what does Clem see? Well, he sees basically a little bit of everything, right? Yeah, he goes for a couple missile turrets right now, assuming that it might be some Muta as well. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe he just goes for the Spire, knowing his opponent is going to scan, and then obviously overreact right here, hopefully, by going for maybe some additional Thors on top of all of those missile turrets. Still, though, the creep cleaning squad is here, and Clem is going to town on as much here as he possibly can. Slowly but surely building up that mech Terran composition. So, the Terran economy right now is really looking good. The army from Terran is looking good. The supply count is looking good as well. The one advantage, though, that I really like here for Bly is the upgrades, right? So, +2/+2 is already done for Bly, whereas 1/1 is just about to finish for Clem. That's massive. So, if we talk about advantages in StarCraft, upgrades certainly are not to be underestimated. As a matter of fact, when I first started playing StarCraft myself, it took me like 5 years to figure out how good upgrades are. Seriously, upgrades are massive. For example, if you get one armor upgrade, Banelings can actually live through a siege tank shot. You know how massive that is? That is huge. Anyways, the Cyclones and Hellions, though, not overcommitting. I really like this from Clem. So this is really what categorizes Clem in a way, right? He doesn't really take that many risks. He plays very, very conservatively. Love, by the way, the going for the siege tanks here. Yeah, shooting across these bubbles is really going to give them a lot of additional value. But he probably won't move out until he's close to maxing out, which is basically the point in the game where we have arrived right now. A lot of Widow Mines in this composition as well, which I really, really like. Maybe they are meant to just deal with primarily these Zerglings and Banes. Normally with Battle Mech, we don't see Widow Mines added, but I actually kind of like it. They are a relatively cheap investment. I mean, you make them out of the same factory that also obviously produces those Hellions. So going for a couple of those, can certainly give you some good detonations. A lot of infestors are already available though for Bly. He's going to be able to land some fungal growths maybe. He could go for Neuroparasite as well. +3 upgrades are already coming up here for Bly as well, so he certainly wants to stick with his army composition. Thing is, how are you going to clean this Terran army up, right? This is a scary, scary Terran force. I think Bly has just decided to give this base up. I mean, maybe with the help right here of some of those changelings, he can get some good value as well. Well, those Marines unupgraded, no combat shields, no way of getting out of there. They will get picked off. And, well, there we have it. A couple of corrosive biles do land right now on some of those Liberators. That's obviously a really good trade. Infestors don't need to make sure that they get out of the line of fire. Roaches and Ravagers should be able to clean all of this up. And eventually, Bly does manage to hold. At the same time, though, a couple of Blue Flame Hellions right here move on the right-hand side of the map. They're going to be able to roast 13 drones in just a blink of an eye. Bit of a drone barbecue over here. And, well, it looks like they're not done just yet as they continue onwards with the harassment over here. This is so much damage, man. Yes, Queens will finish this all off at some point, but this is already way more damage than you want at this point in the game. 41 drones here were killed by Clem. All right. So let's check out the resilience right here from Bly, right? This is a really difficult position to be in. His economy certainly has been hurt quite a bit, but I gotta hand it to him as well. Supply-wise, he still looks pretty healthy. He's got some good upgrades, and he still certainly has a unit composition that can hold back the army of Clem. Usually, Terran Mech has a bit of a hard time closing out a game. I mean, if you compare it to, for example, Terran Bio, right? A Terran biological army usually can sort of snowball ahead. So at some point when you get a really good engagement, you can just simply rally across the map and parade push through the center, for example, right? And just simply reinforce super quickly. Well, this is rough. Oh, this is rough right here. Bly tries to move up that ramp maybe to see if there's going to be another base for him to mine from. Instead, he manages to find himself pinned between a bunch of Cyclones, Liberators, and then a Planetary Fortress with a siege tank as well. Not quite where you want to be. Liberator here on the right-hand side, once again, being a nuisance. Clem manages to get a couple more of those drone kills. But Terran Mech doesn't really have that momentum advantage, right? You can't really push the tempo very easily with Terran Mech just because the units just move way, way slower. I mean, yeah, you can unsiege all of the tanks and try and move across, but then all of a sudden, Zergling run-bys and whatnot are going to be much, much scarier. And yeah, because of that, usually we don't really see parade pushing with Terran Mech. Also, because Marines and Marauders obviously produce much quicker, you'll usually have some close to your bases anyway if it is going to be a run-by. So just basically what I'm trying to say is if you get ahead with Terran Mech, yes, you obviously can win at a later stage, but you're probably not going to be able to parade push nearly as easily and close out the victory right after you get a big advantage. Alrighty. The Zerg army, though, seems to be on a bit of a prowl. Once again, 8 drones end up going down, man. Oh, We now are above 50 workers killed here in total. And these Blue Flame Hellions not done just yet. Well, they will meet their fate, but even then, trading gas for just minerals, I mean, that's a trade that Clem will take any day of the week against this already late game Zerg army. Thors are now going to be the name of the game. I love this. Okay, so Thors, oh man, Thors have really become one of the best units for Terran, I feel like. They used to be absolutely awful. A, because a lot of Terran players didn't really know exactly when they should switch into them. And B, because their range wasn't nearly as good, right? So nowadays, they have 11 ranged to anti-air, which is insane. It makes them so very formidable against, for example, Brute Lords and units like that. They also prioritize air units, like for example, Vipers really, really hard. Meaning that even if you do manage to... there's a big Liberator right there, by the way, as well. That one didn't take any damage, though. But if you, ooh, hold that thought, because we have a massive Fungal Growth right here and a super nice set of Corrosive Biles. It is picking off a lot of these Terran units as well. Some of the infested Terrans are going to have to join the fray as well, as Corrosive Bile is now on cooldown. We don't see really any kind of anti-air for Zerg other than those Corrosive Biles and the infested Terrans, but that all of a sudden may very well be able to turn the tables. But basically, in one of the recent patches, the Thor managed to go up to 11 anti-air range, which is insane. That's one more than, like, a Brute Lord. That's insane. Really, really sick. Obviously, you know, air to ground for Brute Lords. So, I've actually had quite a lot of troubles on the Zerg ladder fighting against this Terran mech army. Thors, while I used to underestimate them and think that I could just kill them with Zerglings, they are certainly very, very strong, especially once they finish up the +3 plating level, which is exactly what Clem is doing right now. So I really like to see how well Thors are going to play out in this game. Anyways, Clem is now maxed out. Now note, this is a very strong Terran maxed out army, or a very strong maxed out Terran army, rather. However, there's a lot of that supply count that's caught up in Terran SCVs right now. So there's 85 workers for Terran, which is probably a little bit more than you want at this point. Maybe he wants to continue mining for just a little while longer, but this is not an army composition. Well, look, this feels so bad. When you actually have to sacrifice some SCVs, or you are playing Zerg and your opponent is just sort of sacrificing some SCVs. I think he tried to like repair up that Liberator or something right over there. That's such a cheeky little move. But whenever Terran players start donating SCVs, you know you're in a lot of trouble. Anyways, that Terran economy, that Terran bank is going to certainly improve quite a bit right now. Okay, so here's that Terran mech army, right? Moving across the map. Look at these Thors. This is basically the mode where they hit harder to single targets. And it's going to make them especially good against those Brute Lords. Once again, though, a couple of those infested Terrans apparently are going to be needed here to deal with those Hellions. Clem has been relentless. 83 drones end up going down here. But still, you know what? The resilience here of Bly is actually extremely sick, right? I mean, he's managed to max out during all of this. This is a scary Zerg army, not to be underestimated. He goes for the Neuroparasite. He's got Vipers, Infestors, Brute Lords, Corruptors, and Ravagers, right? A couple Roaches and Lynx in there as well. But this is a Zerg army that essentially you would go for in the late game anyways. So if Bly is maxed out here, even though, you know, he took a lot of damage getting to this point, it doesn't matter how he got there, right? It's an army that can certainly win on a one-on-one fight against Terran as well, though. Well, you're gonna need to fight a little bit differently, I think, with these Roaches if you want to get any proper value. And this is kind of what is also the downside of Terran mech. I mean, you kind of slow push with like static defense over here in the center, but engaging into a Brute Lord Infestor army is very difficult. You basically need to go for the slowest of slowest push, and obviously if you do that, all of a sudden the whole map is wide open. I mean, if right now Bly decided to go for a push towards the top left, there's no way the Terran could scramble over there in time. You'd probably be in a bit of a base trade scenario. There we go. Neuroparasite being utilized. We see a Fungal Growth right here on a couple of those Thors as well. That kind of thing hurts a lot. Well, this is what I mean though. Look at the amount of damage, right? You see that? There was like one Thor Schult right there on one of those Brute Lords. Really, really scary. Corrosive Biles, followed up with a bunch of those Fungal Growths. Infested Terrans obviously are going to be able to pick up some of these air units as well. And even though Clem wants to close out this game, he's not really getting that much value out of the army that he's got just yet. Once again, those liberation zones certainly are going to allow him to zone away against this Zerg army, and I think eventually the base in the center right here will be abandoned. I kind of want to see him, like, switch up to, yeah, exactly, more Corruptors and maybe even Hydralisks. Something like that, right? Just more anti-air. Units that have a little bit more range. Corrosive Bow is very good, but Terran has just simply been mining a lot more as well. Units lost, though? Actually, not even that bad. You know what? 91 freaking drones ended up going down here, but resources lost is not actually that heavily in favor of Terran. Super sick. Oh, I probably would have been so triggered at this point in the game if I lost like 80 plus workers, right? That I'd probably just play a terrible game. But Bly's like, you know what? I don't care. As long as I get my dream army up. I mean, I do care, obviously, but it's very good for me either way. There we go. Corrupt just trying their very best. Thing is, though, Clem right now is sitting at 10,000 resources in the bank. So even if this army dies, there's going to be a lot more where that came from. I love the dynamic between Spore Crawlers and Liberators as well. Ooh, once again, massive fungal growth. Chain fungal as well, and there we go. A couple of those neural parasites being utilized on the Thors. They are going to start hitting some of their brothers as well, and now all of a sudden the Brute Lords are going to be able to get into the mix as well. Those Brutelings are going to throw themselves at the Thors, and then the Siege Tanks in the back essentially do friendly fire to the Thors, more so than they are helping out against this fight. So super sick. Super sick play right there by Bly, trying to make the best of a really rough scenario. More and more Infestors and Roaches right now are being produced. I think going into more Roaches right now is rather rough. You don't really want to get too many Roaches out, but you know what? Oh, Bly manages to break that army. And, well, I guess with that disposition as well, I can already imagine some really salty Terran comments, okay? It's like, oh my god, Lowko, it's literally impossible to break Zerg. Don't worry, guys. The game is certainly not over just yet. Clem has got himself a very scary economy. And really, like, this game is gonna become a game of cost efficiency. The Zerg late game army, as these Terran players have rightfully noted, is extremely cost efficient when microed successfully. Those corrosive balls, essentially free. Those fungal growths, essentially free. Not a lot of units have gone down here for Zerg in quite some time, and Bly is still maxed out. Still though, I'm looking at his bank, and it's just simply not as impressive, right? I wouldn't get a mortgage right now from Bly. I mean, yes, you could get a couple minerals, but in the late game, you really want to have gas, okay? Don't get your hopes up too much. Oh, man. Those Thors, look at them. Dealing so much damage there from a distance. Insanely sick play. Love once again, though, those or what are they called? Spore Crawlers right there in the front. Essentially keeping these Vikings at bay and allowing the Brute Lords to deal a little bit more damage. Still, though, I don't think... Yeah, there's only a single Brute Lord that remains now. It's got 2 kills. It's kind of weird how, like, Brute Lords don't even deal that much damage themselves. But they allow the Siege Tanks to deal a lot of the damage to the Terran army instead. Well, here we go once again. Fungal growths are going down, but they're not really connecting this time around. Okay, and this was a really good push here by Clem. All of a sudden, doing the big switcheroo, pushing through the center rather than the right-hand side, which I think Bly expected. The Liberators got up into position, and that means now that the base in the center once again gets killed. In the meantime, Clem is mining over here in the center, but he's also essentially mining one of the Zerg bases here. I don't know if the top left or the bottom right is considered to be a Zerg base, but essentially he's mining 2 more bases here than Bly. So slowly but surely, this Zerg army is being pushed into the back of the Zerg bases as well. And the more that this happens, right? Well, no way counterattacks are gonna happen here. But the more that this happens, the less economy Bly will have. Okay, should we pull up this tab once again? Yeah, Zerg slowly but surely is being chipped away at. Plus Terran is out mining the Zerg at this point as well. Yeah, nice. Got himself, I guess, well, yeah, a neural parasite there. The Liberator was like, okay, I'm Zerg now. Just kidding, I'm Terran again. Haha. Oh, big switch right now to Zerglings, though. Remember, they've got those sick upgrades that we saw him researching it in the early game. Still a couple of those Hellions, though. The Blue Frame Hellions are going to be phenomenal. I like the idea of going into Zerglings once again, but it's a bit of a last-ditch effort, a bit of a desperation move. A lot of the infested Terrans right now rain forward as well, but Bly is forced to GG out of this game as Clem slowly but surely dismantled his opponent. Okay, so I'm curious, right? How many Terran players would have decided to just try and YOLO for the all-in after establishing such a big lead in the earlier stages of the game? I think a lot of Terran players would, and then they probably would have found themselves overextending against Infestor Brute Lord armies. When you're fighting that army on creep, it is so much harder to break. And that's kind of what Bly was going for. But Clem, he played this game out with the mantra of when he's ahead, he's going to try and get more ahead. Eventually, he will win once his opponent mines out the bases. And I think that's probably where we will see StarCraft go more and more over the next couple of years. Overextending is one of the riskiest moves to make, and usually, right, say you get an advantage. Usually it's much safer to just simply expand on your side of the map rather than trying to take a base from the opponent. And yeah, with that, we are arriving at more and more ridiculous games of late game StarCraft 2. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get notifications as soon as I upload more. A special shout out to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for your generosity. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile. And I'll see you once more in the next one.